end up like pressuring a lot of my friends to start businesses.
Yeah.
They'll be like, this thing, like it really annoys me. And I was like, you could like start a business. And
you have agency.
Or they'll have an idea and I'm like you could actually like do that, People are like, stop asking me to create a business. I don't want to. There's a hump that you have to get over where it comes from people encouraging you, but it also in some ways has to come from within where you're kind of like, yeah, I can actually do something about this. It's not just a given in my life.
You're listening to Granite Goodness, the podcast where we interview New Hampshire people making the world a better place.
Oh, Susie, where are you going now?
My name is Andy DeMeo. This episode was sponsored by and recorded in Treeline Outfitters in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Today, I'm speaking to my friend Jason Plant. Jason is the co-founder and CEO of two companies, Green Lightning, where he provides affordable solar energy, and Hydrophos Solutions, which helps reduce phosphorus pollution from wastewater. We talk about learning from failure, why Jason should grow a mustache, stealing ideas from our moms and girlfriends, and a ton of other things on this episode of Granite Goodness. Jason Plant, thanks for coming on Granite Goodness.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
I don't even remember how we met. I have this vague sense that at some point or another, I became familiar with your Substack, Venture Time, which is really, really cool. We don't have to talk about Venture Time. You're making a face right now. But no, I don't know. I mean, so you're a young guy. You're a couple years younger than me. And I would put myself into the old guy category. But you are one of these people who, I don't know, like you just strike me like you're a super entrepreneur. Like you've always been interested in it. You have this really impressive record. You have like won all these competitions. Like you're just this super credentialed guy. And with your Substack, like I loved reading your Substack because you also have just such a deep interest and level of understanding on all these really like on finance, on economics, on capitalism and entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship and digital currency. Like I just feel like your range of expertise is so vast, and I've loved over the years through the LinkedIn feed or whatever, seeing all the different things that you're up to. And when I started the Granite Goodness thing, I was like, obviously I'm going to have Jason Plant on because he just lives and breathes the values that we're trying to promote with Granite Goodness. So that's what I have to say about you.
Oh, thank you so much, Andy. I really appreciate that. I only made a face when you talked about Venture Time because I actually haven't published an article in like 2 years or something, but I originally started that, like all of the range of topics that you see on there.
Yeah.
Every single article that I wrote was about something that I didn't know anything about.
Really?
Before I wrote the article. Yeah, so I created Venture Time. There was a good mentor of mine, Joel, who started Ecotex.
Yeah.
And he recommended to me, if you want to learn about stuff and you want to show people that you know what you're talking about, you should create a Substack publication and just use it as an opportunity. Anything you want to learn about, you do enough research to write a good article about it, and then you publish the article to basically provide value to your network. And when you're applying for jobs or doing other things as an entrepreneur, then you have this portfolio of articles and knowledge that you have because you wrote the articles. So all of that stuff I had just learned about. Just read other articles on it and studied up enough that I could learn about it. And I've actually used that at my company, Hydrophos, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But I have my team writing articles, especially are the business people on our team. They write articles about the technology that we're working on because it forces us all to learn about the technology's inner workings and know enough to be able to share it publicly, right? Public scrutiny is a pretty good way to force people to
test your
to know what they're
expertise, right?
talking about. Yeah.
I love that. Well, what do they say that it's like you can know something, but the best test is if you can teach it, right? If you can't teach it, you don't know it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the idea. It wasn't my idea, but
Right.
I did execute on it. So
Well, you
it was a good time.
executed, you iterated. Like I think that's so often. I mean, like Granite Goodness isn't my idea at all. It's a combination of things that I saw other people doing that I was inspired by and wanted to iterate on in a way that I thought was unique and valuable for my network, right? Exactly like you're talking about. I don't think it's as impressive as writing like, a dozen or so really awesome articles about all the different complicated stuff that you cover on Venture Time, but
I appreciate that.
that's seriously cool. You would never guess that. Like I never in a million years would have imagined that before writing about each of those topics. I mean, the ones I can remember off the top of my head is like you talked about, the U.S. budget, like the debt crisis, election security through like the blockchain and all that. Like that's a crazy thing. Conservation is another one. You did a conservation article, right? Like you some pretty deep dives on all these things. Never in a million years would I have thought that you were a layperson to those issues before reading them.
Well, I appreciate that. And that was the goal. I just picked things that were interesting to me. And like, some stuff, I'm not necessarily like a big blockchain guy, but
Right.
it was something I didn't know about. And
Yeah.
I had like a little bit of like an insecurity about it. Like people are talking about
Everyone else
this
is talking
and
about
I
it.
don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
And one of the experiences we had with Hydrofoster, where we went to Silicon Valley, like half the people in our cohort at that program were blockchain entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so I came back from that being like, I don't know anything about this. So that's why I decided to write about it. So they're not even necessarily, many of them are, but they're not even necessarily, things I knew anything about beforehand. They're just like, oh, I was interested in that. Like one was autonomous lawnmowers, and I was just thinking, I heard about autonomous lawnmowers, and I mowed the lawn a lot as a high schooler. That's like kind of how I made money.
Yeah.
And I was like, I hate mowing the lawn. So I just wanted to know everything about that
I wouldn't wish
market,
this on anybody. Yeah.
and then convince my parents to get an autonomous lawnmower.
Yeah.
So that nobody had to do it anymore.
There you go. Well, that's kind of, doesn't Bill Gates say that he's like, working for, at the time he called them nerd culture has changed since the 80s and all that. But he used to say that, you want to, someday you'll probably work for a nerd, right? Like me, I'm a nerd, me speaking as Bill Gates. And you want to because like they're lazy and they want to find the most efficient solution to the problem. Or I think I'm actually conflating two different Bill Gates quotes, one about nerds probably being your boss and another about lazy people being efficient, but same idea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, with lawn mowing and all that. So the first thing I wanted, I want to dig in more to that. I think that like what you just shared just now about taking on these topics, learning them in depth, knowing nothing about them up front. I feel like that's a pretty essential like entrepreneurial, like even when you're like looking for jobs, right? Like that I think is one of the go-to things to advise people on if they don't have experience in a thing. You say, well, you may not have experience, but what you can say is, I learned thing X really well. Here's an example of that, right? And like, I don't know of anything that would be of more value to the entrepreneur than the ability to, be exposed to any issue and in relatively short time, be able to achieve a good nuanced understanding of it. So I don't know, would you say that's your nature? Like, tell me about young Jason. Like, you're young now, but kid Jason, the lawnmower hustler.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's funny because I would say that wasn't my nature growing up at all. When I was growing up, firstly, I was homeschooled for a lot of my life, and the freedom and flexibility that gave me.
Yeah.
I did online homeschooling
Wow.
before COVID was ever a thing.
Ahead of the curve.
Right. So when I was actually, my biggest concern about going to college was I've only done school online. What if
Right.
I'm not prepared for going to the classroom setting and everything? And then COVID happened and everything turned online.
Right.
And I was like, nice.
I'm prepared for this.
I know how to do that. Yeah. But anyway, so in high school, I was homeschooled online, and as a result of that, my parents had no idea what I was doing at all. I had full freedom to do my schoolwork whenever I wanted, wherever I wanted.
Yeah.
And so what that ended up turning into was I would spend 3 days a week, and I would do a full week's worth of work in 3 days, and then
Yeah.
I'd just take the rest of the days off. And then when it got close to summer vacation,
Right.
I got really excited, and I finished my schoolwork like a month or two early every year. And so I just loved the flexibility that gave me. It was really good for my health. You know, I was able to work in exercise and sleep and having a good diet and everything, because I wasn't constrained to this daily structure that most 9-to-5 jobs or 9-to-5 kind of classroom experiences have. And so I was realizing going into college and thinking about my future career that most careers don't have that kind of freedom and flexibility. And around the same time as that, I learned about this idea of social entrepreneurship through just an entrepreneurship class I took in high school that I was curious about. And it seemed like the ultimate win-win solution.
Yeah.
Right? You can make money while just by nature of what your business is, improving the world and doing something good.
Right.
And so I really gravitated towards that idea, not just because of the impact potential and, you know, kind of the sexiness, so to speak, of being an entrepreneur, but also for the freedom and flexibility that I was used to and really wanted to retain in my life. But to answer your earlier question, it was absolutely not my nature. I was very much a bookworm kid who was trained to think in the way that a traditional school setting would teach you to think, right?
Yeah.
You just, there's one right answer, and you need to study and you need to know that right answer, and not necessarily a lot of room in my way of thinking back then for any kind of creativity or thinking outside the box or being okay with failure or not knowing how to do what I was setting out to do. And so that was probably one of my biggest challenges going into entrepreneurship, was realizing I'm not prepared for this at all. Like I need to basically learn things on the fly and get really good at that. And so luckily in college, I had a lot of experiences in kind of the safe college environment to prototype that and to be okay with learning things on the fly, because I had the safety net of being a college student. And, you know, after graduating, you just don't have that safety net. You have to pay your rent.
The stakes are real.
The stakes are real. Right. So I was very lucky in my experience at the University of New Hampshire, where you also went to college.
Wildcats.
Go Wildcats. Very lucky to have gotten those experiences through the Entrepreneurship Center, through the Sustainability Institute, and a lot of other programs out there. So I would say it's something I learned along the way, just like everything else. With entrepreneurship, you learn it along the way, and you never feel qualified for the job that you have. But that kind of insecurity and gap helps propel you to get there.
Yeah. Well, it's like you're only growing when you're not in your comfort zone, right?
Exactly.
That's what people say. There's all these fun metaphors that people use, like we're building the airplane while we're flying it, or, you know, jump in the deep end, stuff like that.
It very much feels like that.
And they're all true. You know, they're all true. Like there's a kernel of truth in all of them, no matter how hyperbolic. But I'm glad you mentioned UNH. I'm trying to be better in these episodes. Like people complain to me in my huge audience of my mom This is a New Hampshire-oriented podcast. Tell me about your relationship to New Hampshire. You from here? Like, what do you love about it? What do you find unique about it? Just give me the whole, Jason in the Granite State. What's going on?
Oh, yeah. I love New Hampshire. I was born here. I was born in Nashua and grew up in the town of Samberton.
Yeah.
Which is, for people who don't know where that is, that's right by Guilford, Laconia, Tilton.
Yeah.
Right by Lake Winnisquam. Beautiful area, lots of woods. There's the lake, which is really fun to do in the summer.
Yeah.
And it's the right amount of rural where
Right.
you're with nature, but it's the right amount of I don't even want to call it metropolitan, but it's
Right.
the right amount of
There's
being
stuff going
close
on,
to
right.
society
Yeah.
where you don't have to drive 30 minutes to
Right.
go to the nearest grocery store.
Right.
So I absolutely have loved it. And then, of course, I went to college at the University of New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And loved my experience there. And actually, now that I'm living back in Samberton, I recently got elected to be on their budget committee. So it's
Yeah.
gone full circle.
Look at that. Yeah.
I went to UNH and then I came back and kind of have this volunteer position to
Right.
help my town compose their budget.
Yeah.
Just a 1-year term, but it's fun.
Yeah.
It's public policy stuff, which is totally new to me, but it's kind of that experience that we talked about earlier
Right.
about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I'm okay. I'm confident I can learn
Yeah.
what I need to do to be a great committee member. And I was asked by somebody else to run, so it's not
Right.
like I just
Yeah.
decided to go and do this.
Right.
But yeah, it's those are my New Hampshire credentials.
Those are pretty strong.
Pretty strong,
Those are-
pure blood New Hampshire guy.
Pretty robust. That's man, there's so many things going in my head. I just the interview before this one, I was talking to Declan McEachern, the mayor of Portsmouth, and he talked a lot about this. I didn't ask him this question. He answered it before I asked, but one of the things I was going to ask him was, what's your advice for young people? Like what would you tell them? And he talked a lot about like the ideal of service, and how serving, volunteering, like doing something for other people is both the best way to meet people, to get involved, to do all that stuff. It also just feels good, and I don't know that is something that's communicated clearly all the time to young people. I think there's a stereotype that youth is associated with selfishness and, a desire for short-term, wins and validation and all these things. And let's just say this. I think Declan would be very happy. He's never going to listen to this, but maybe he will. I hope. If you are, thanks very much, Declan. But if he does, you are type 1A for like New Hampshire native sons. What we want them to be, But people, it's for real. Like people leave, and there's a whole organization, Stay Work Play, right? That's devoted to get young people excited about stay, work, play, right? Like really. So you touched on a thing in kind of our opening salvo of questions that I really wanted to dig in with you. You talked about, failure, having the safety net of like the college environment in which to learn and try new things. Tell me more about that, right? Like, because now you strike me as someone who, clearly you're doing all these things. You're comfortable doing new stuff. You're comfortable not knowing. You're comfortable failing even, right? Mm-hmm. You see the value in like messing up, learning new stuff, doing different things. When did that all start to, click for you? Like the entrepreneurial mindset, like take me through your journey as, it's clearly you wanted the flexibility, right? Like you talked about some of that, but.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So going through college, I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. It felt like the easiest decision of my life to go there and do the entrepreneurship major and just like extremely lean into that.
Yeah.
But for a long time, I didn't really have like a business idea that I felt very passionate about.
Yeah.
So I just kind of spent time learning the fundamentals, which is part of why, like a lot of people ask, well, if you want to be an entrepreneur, why do you go to college? Well, because
Yeah.
having a good understanding of the fundamentals, having the network, having the resources is actually very beneficial.
Right.
But anyway, yeah, so it took me a while to come up with an idea, but then a good friend of mine, my girlfriend Daisy, she convinced me to compete in the Social Venture Innovation Challenge out of the University of New Hampshire, which is, as it sounds, is a social venture competition. And soon enough, I was pulling together some of my closest friends, but also kind of the smarter people that I knew. I would still say they're some of the smartest people I know. And pulled together a team, and for some reason, just that act of getting started got me thinking, looking for opportunities in everything.
Yeah.
You know, every class I was taking, I learned about an environmental or social problem. I was thinking, okay, this is a problem. How could we potentially solve it?
Yeah.
And eventually, it happened to me in my most unexpected class. It was my ecology class, the only gen ed that I had to take at UNH, because the rest I came in with credits. The only gen ed that I had to take. And I learned about this problem of eutrophication, which, for those that are not familiar, is basically when too many nutrients end up in our bodies of water. It's either usually from agricultural runoff or from wastewater treatment plants. And the nutrients we're concerned with are generally either phosphorus or nitrogen. And in theory, potassium, but it usually doesn't come in large enough quantities.
Yeah.
And so I learned about this issue, and I was like, what if some of these resources that are ending up in our water, and we don't want them there, could be useful resold somewhere else if only we could isolate them from the water. And so, and around the same time I was learning about circular economy business models, which were very cool to me, because it's like making business and industry work the way that nature does, in a cyclical way.
Nothing's wasted.
No waste. So I was really interested in that concept. And so the original idea was actually to basically put filtration technology into hydroelectric plants. Because the water's already passing through hydroelectric plants, and we could obtain the resource we kind of narrowed down on was phosphorus. And I'll talk about why in a second. But the original idea was to put the filtration technology into hydroelectric plants. And then after some research, we kind of learned, what about fish? How are fish going to get through our filtration? Right. And so a lot of things about it didn't make sense. And we learned about actually a lot of the runoff and phosphorus that ends up in our waterways comes from wastewater treatment plants. And that was a piece of infrastructure that already had space, and it was technologically feasible to develop a filtration device to take phosphorus out of those wastewater treatment plants. And so that was kind of the idea that we came out with, and we've iterated on different technologies, but it's always been that kind of same business model since the beginning, to essentially take phosphorus out of wastewater in wastewater treatment plants, and then redirect that phosphorus into the fertilizer industry, where it is very much needed. There's a global phosphorus shortage. And so by doing that, we were not only able to clean the water and prevent eutrophication, but also we were able to address the phosphorus shortage in the fertilizer industry and create really a sustainable source of phosphorus, because today it's gotten through mining. So that was kind of my first foray into entrepreneurship. We were super lucky that we did well in the SVIC, and I think in a lot of ways, our story as a company is exactly what was intended for the SVIC, to inspire people to think about being an entrepreneur and come up with ideas and pursue it. And so after that, we kind of just got hooked on this experience of developing our venture and competing in these various competitions to win money. And the competitions were extremely impactful for us because, you know, when you're starting a company like that, where it's big infrastructural projects, there's a huge chicken and egg problem where if you want to get funding, you need a prototype, but a prototype can cost tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars or more in some cases. And so the competitions gave us a way to get that money just by having a really well thought out idea and business model and at least a theoretical semblance of a technology. And so we continued going with that and picked up some really good funding from those competitions and continued to develop the technology. And throughout college, I got to, you know, participate in a couple of other entrepreneurial opportunities like the Ryan's Angel Fund, where they actually let us invest some of the school's money into startups, which was really cool. Did a lot of things, a lot of programs at the eCenter, like the I2 Passport program, and participated in a lot of stuff at the Sustainability Institute, like the International Changemaker Grant, where they give you some money to travel abroad and do an international development project. And so all of these things came together at around the same time when I was about to graduate. Hydrofoss, the technology was still under development. And so I realized I still need kind of like a day job to pay my bills after I graduate. And I got offered this incredible position. I had been interning at this nonprofit. It was kind of like a nonprofit with a partner venture fund. And so I helped them build the venture fund, but I was also helping them with some of the nonprofit stuff where they train entrepreneurs on how to be really great in sustainability and social impact, but also the fundamentals of kind of starting and running a business. And so I was offered this incredible position to come on as the president of this nonprofit in the December before I graduated. And so I was basically doing my full-time job during my last semester of senior year. And when I graduated, that was it. I was out in the real world doing my dream job, doing entrepreneurship with Hydrofoss and with the nonprofit, which was called Tory Project. And I spent a lot of my time on Tory Project because that was how I was kind of trying to make my income. But as soon as I looked under the hood, and this gets to your point about the failure, right? As soon as I looked under the hood of the organization, it was clear that we had an almost negligible amount of cash on hand, and we were burning about $8,000 a month in terms of what we were spending. And so I went to our board of directors and basically tried to convince them to launch a consultancy, which was one of the things I learned at UNH, was how to do B Corp consulting, helping companies get B Corp certified. And so I convinced them to launch this consultancy in an effort to save the nonprofit by creating basically a social venture as a core function of it, so that we didn't have to rely on one-off donor funding to keep the organization alive. And so I was working 12-hour days and really pounding the pavement, trying to make sales and trying to build the business there. But it all came too late. And so eventually the organization failed. And that was a pretty devastating time for me because, you know, not only had I not gotten the income that I hoped for, but I also I lost what to me was definitely a dream job. When I wasn't doing the consulting business, I was working with entrepreneurs like myself to help them grow their businesses and make an impact. And there's nothing that I would have wanted to do more, but life throws you those curveballs. And so after that happened, I was somewhat desperate for an income. I had perhaps foolishly signed a 1-year lease where I had to pay rent for the next year, even though
everybody doesn't.
I couldn't necessarily afford it. And so luckily another business opportunity fell right on my lap around the same time that Tory Project was going under, and that was to create a solar business. And so my girlfriend Daisy, again, her brother had been trained on how to install solar panels, and he was thinking about creating a business, but he kind of didn't have the background in the business side. He was very much a builder type. You know, he had been doing construction projects and doing all these cool things. And so around the same time as Tory Project was going out of business, I came to him and I said, well, I can be your business guy.
Yeah.
I have experience with that, and you can lead us to actually completing the installations. And so we launched the business from there. It's called Green Lightning Energy. And basically the thesis of this business was that actually around the same time we were thinking about starting the business, we talked to both of our moms. And both of our moms,
Love moms. Yeah.
They're the best, right? And so both of our moms, they wanted solar, but they had gotten these egregiously high solar estimates.
Sure.
Like double what we think it should be. And so we thought, well, we were already going to give our moms a discount because they're our moms, and they were going to be our first customers. But then we realized, like, what if we just did this for everybody? Like, imagine how many more people could get solar if we cut the price, not always in half, but by at least 30 or 40%.
The mom discount. Right.
The mom discount, right, for everyone. And so that's exactly what we did. We seeded our business with the money that both of our moms gave us to do solar for them. They were our first customers, and they were very patient with us as we were figuring out the nuances of working with the utility companies and making the installations work and stuff like that. And so we launched the business, and now it's a fully functioning business. And for any of the listeners out there, if you want solar, we're an affordable option. We sell the exact same systems as the big guys, but we just genuinely give people a better deal.
And if you're a mom,
maybe
something special in there.
Yeah, we can work something out for sure. And so, that's kind of where the entrepreneurial journey has led me to up to this point. And now I live off of the income that I get from Green Lightning and from some consulting work that I've been doing. And I finally figured out how to make a living out of it. But I will say, when I was in college, and college is amazing. You're in this bubble where everybody supports you and everyone says that you're the greatest.
There's no skin in the game.
You're going to change the world, right? And then when you go out in the real world, it's a lot harder than it is made to seem to be.
Right.
Having that first kind of failure experience really humbled me, but it also taught me that it's okay when that happens. I struggled for a little bit for sure, but it wasn't this like life catastrophe that I expected that it would be. I ended up being okay. It took a while, but I ended up being totally okay. And as your greatest fear as an entrepreneur, your business failing, it wasn't as bad as I thought. And so now I don't have so many fears when I'm going into these things, because I know what's on the other end of it, and I know it's not pretty, but you can survive it.
Yeah.
So
and it's a part of, even if the whole venture itself doesn't fail, right? Like, failure it's completely baked in, right? You're gonna mess something up, you're gonna get something wrong, right? And just kind of acclimating yourself to that in advance is, I don't know, I think it's the right attitude to have. But there's nothing quite like actual, like, sounds like you had a little bit of a long night of the soul. but it's good,
Yes.
you know, like,
Oh, for sure.
and you're also, again, I mean, you must be tired of people saying this to you, but like, how old are you? 24?
I'm 23.
Oh my God. Yeah. The fact that you've done all this stuff and like you've had these experiences that you're like, you are okay. You're doing great. And you should be very proud.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
But man, I mean, so this is really funny. I'm glad that you shared that about Daisy, your girlfriend. Like you and I, this is something we have in common, right? When I did the Social Venture Challenge, which, you know, listeners have heard me talk about way too much, but similar, you know, I'd always wanted to do it. Never felt like I had a good idea. It was my last semester. And, you know, my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, Jess, she was like, why don't you do something with the bees? There's always hearing stuff wrong with the bees. Like, just do something with the bees. She was in like a beekeeping enthusiasts club or something in Boston where she went to school. So I was like, okay, we'll do something with the bees, and, you know, did some research, and it just ended up like you. It was this kind of, I don't know if ragamuffin is the right word to use. It's not a word I get to use often. It was this, what I mean by that, it was this unexpected like series of coincidences, and, you know, just learning things, getting people together, and, you know, I ended up winning the whole thing, which I was not expecting, and it was like this really fun, life-changing experience. Feeling. It is a great feeling. It validated me in ways that I never imagined, and still, like, that really was a life-changing moment for me. Of course, that I would say is where the similarities stop between you and me, in terms of like you went on to pretty much do a clean sweep of every entrepreneurship competition that exists in the Western Hemisphere, not just at UNH, but like, I mean, I'd want the viewers to know, Jason, like there's like a national entrepreneurship competition, right? At the collegiate level.
Yes. Yeah. We've won 2 national competitions where we got first place, and then recently we did one in Canada called the Stu Clark Venture Competition, and that one we got second place in. So those are kind
unacceptable.
Of the big. It was like,
how dare you?
So close, but it honestly, it always surprises me when we win, because the competitors are incredible. It's actually the best experience going to those things, because you're beating all these people that are also working on these important problems, and they have these incredible solutions, and you can kind of just get a glimpse into the future, and,
right,
and know that it's hopeful, even if half or a quarter of these people end up succeeding. And so, I mean, our venture is amazing. It's the best in my mind, but it's always a kind of surprising and humbling moment when you get chosen. So we're very honored that we've gotten so many opportunities to do that.
Well, clearly it's not for nothing, right? I felt the same way, and it over time, it had, like you said, it's definitely made me appreciate, right, like what the real value of something like the social venture competition is, or even like other similar competitions where the SVIC is, I think, relatively unique. You'd have a better sense of this, but like the criteria is, what's the word? Like the barrier to entry for that is very low, right? It's like a 2-page paper video.
Oh yeah.
That's all that you're being judged on, and a little presentation.
Yeah.
So it's a great kind of way to get people thinking about ideas, talking about stuff, but you don't have to submit, you know, like a 100-page business plan, or, you know, customer validation and research and all that stuff, right? Like, there's none of that.
But that's a good way to start, right?
Yeah.
And I think I like the way that UNH has designed their programs, where you have the SVIC in the beginning, where that kind of gives you that initial foot in the door and makes it very easy for you to participate in what UNH has to offer for entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And then there's the Maurice Prize, which is due after that. And that judges you just based on your progress in learning. You could fail during the term of that competition, but if you learned a lot and you really leaned into it, you can still win that prize.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the pipeline is the Holloway competition, where you are very heavily scrutinized on kind of the business model and kind of having a complete package together. But you're given all of this time to develop that. And so I don't know if it was on purpose or not, the way that they put all of those together, but
Right. It's a good circuit. Yeah.
it really helped us to build our venture. It was a good model for, putting together the fundamentals that we
Right.
then used to get, bigger funding
Yeah.
later.
Well, even if not for your, like, again, I don't do half-acre beekeeping anymore, which is what my thing was, and it was real for a little while, and I was a professional beekeeper for 2 years, which feels crazy and like another life.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, it was fun, but the lessons I learned, right, like as you're saying, just going through the exercise of, I have to prepare a pitch. I have to know how to talk about this with anybody, right? A stranger, someone who knows about bees, everyone in between, someone who might be a customer, right? Like the sheer exercise of, like you were saying in the beginning, going from knowing nothing about a thing to going to, I need to be comfortable talking about it is so valuable. Probably the most valuable thing I've ever done in my life. And it's changed my life, and I never would have done it. Someone asked me to do it, right? Someone was like, dude, it was someone else's idea, really. So I love it.
Sometimes you need that extra push, and I think both of us have been very fortunate to have those people in our life that encourage us to kind of reach our full potential.
Right.
And try to do things that are uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
like I said, I was very much like a bookworm kid, play it by the rules, don't try anything unless I really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I needed that extra push, and that it really changed my life. And I give Daisy like all the credit in the world for pushing me to do that.
Well, there is a kind of thread here. Like the other thing I wanted to pull on the thread is the moms, like as silly as it is, right? But really, I mean, because they made you read the same book. There is this phrase in like the entrepreneurship world, right? The mom test. The idea is that if you are starting a business or building something or inventing something, right, and you want honest feedback on it, you can ask anyone except your mom.
Yeah.
Because she's going to think it's great, no matter what,
That's
right?
true.
So this is really cool and interesting. And there's actually a book called The Mom Test, right, that they have people read. But this is so interesting because you did that, but it actually went really well. Like you probably got good feedback from, your mom and your friend's mom as clients, right? Like,
Absolutely.
And it's actually gone quite well for you.
Yeah, they were our guinea pigs, and it's one thing to ask your mom, "Is this a good idea?" It's another thing to ask your mom, "Okay, do you like it so much you're going to spend
tens of thousands
tens of
on
thousands of dollars on it?"
Right.
She really had to believe in it to do that, and so yeah, that's the real mom test.
Right.
If your mom becomes like a major customer.
Right.
But yeah, we're very lucky. I mean, when we visited people's homes, they just see like a bunch of kids, like you said, I'm 23 and my co-founder is like 20.
Yeah.
So when we show up and we say we're the owners of the company,
right.
You can imagine
Whoop.
Not everybody takes you very seriously, but
Sure.
Now that we have some customers to point to and say, yeah, this is a picture right here of an installation that we've done. It's producing exactly what we thought it was going to produce. It's got warranties. It's got all this stuff.
Yeah.
That was like a game changer, and it would have been really a lot harder for us to start that business.
Yeah.
And I was lucky because I was in a desperate position, with the solar business and with like those first initial customers and our moms. Like, we were able to start the business with almost no capital.
Right.
Which is like, that does not happen.
That's unusual.
That
yeah.
does not happen most of the time.
Yeah.
So, mom's the best. That's the moral of the story right there.
You should consider if you're having, I mean, your customers are doing the work for you now, right? But I would consider Jason gently encouraging you to grow a mustache. If you want to look older.
I've been told this before. I don't know
because
if
it's good advice.
I don't know if it works for me, but I'll think about it.
Well, how about this? If I can convince both Daisy and your mom to encourage you to grow a mustache, like these seem to be, like you, I think there's a kind of feminist, thread that we can follow here in terms of like our girlfriends gave us good ideas. My mom is very supportive. She'd help me like do a lot of the stuff for Granted Goodness, but Just
That's
want to
awesome.
acknowledge that. So if that team is on board for the mustache,
All right.
what's standing
Yeah.
in the way?
You heard it here first. Andy's going to call my mom and my girlfriend.
I literally will
And
get
see
them
if
on
we
the
can
same
convince
call.
them.
You think I can, Jason? If I can pitch bees, this is going to be easy. This is going to be easy. Anyway, that's what you're here to talk about today, right? Another question I wanted to ask you, right? I think it's fair to say that there is a kind of generational issue, right, with like anxiety and depression. Certainly for my generation,
Oh, yeah.
I think also for yours, you seem like a very positive dude. You're building a lot of things. You exude optimism. Do your peers find you unusual, right? Like, are there parts of your outlook on life as a doer, a builder, someone who sees the positive future, right? With all these young people that doing cool stuff. Like, I don't know. Tell me about that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I would say I end up like pressuring a lot of my friends to start businesses. 'Cause
Yeah.
they'll be like, oh, this thing, like, it really annoys me. And I was like, you could like start a business. And,
You have
or
agency,
they'll
yeah.
have an idea. And I'm like, you could actually like do that, So there's definitely that where people are like, stop asking me to create a business. I don't want to.
I just want to complain about it, Jason.
But I think, and this is something I've definitely went through in my life before, is like there's kind of this hump that you have to get over to realize that you can actually do something about a given problem, whether it's a problem in your personal life you're trying to overcome or a problem in the world that you want to start a business or a nonprofit around. There's a hump that you have to get over where, and I think it comes from people encouraging you, but it also in some ways has to come from within where you're kind of like, yeah, I can actually do something about this. It's not just a given in my life. And that's one thing, and I haven't been good about this in the past. I'll be the first to say that, but there's a certain locus of control that you need to cultivate in yourself to overcome those things and realize, be really good at knowing the difference between what can I control and what can I not control. Try not to let the things you can't control bother you, and spend all of your focus on the things that you can control and being the best agent of change in those areas. Again, whether it's your personal life or a business. And, I'll be the first to say I'm still a work in progress with those things, but it's something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, it's the effort, I think, is the thing to cultivate, right? Like the exercise of saying, I can try, I want to, I will, right? As opposed to, a kind of fatalist hesitancy that I think a lot of that becomes a little too easy, right? If all you're doing is, doom scrolling on this or that, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, that's not helpful for anybody. It also doesn't feel good,
Oh yeah. I got off social media when I was in high school. I don't know what drove me to do it, but I think at the time I was like, this is just a waste of my time.
Yeah, what's on here?
I'm
What's
just
happening?
scrolling around,
Yeah.
And then as I grew into an adult, I was like, oh my God, this is one of the best decisions I ever made.
Yeah, you see everyone else crumbling
I'm so
around
much
you.
happier. I have more free time.
Yeah.
It's not the silver bullet. There is no silver bullet, but I think that it helps to not be kind of comparing yourself to everybody, because there's always going to be somebody that's doing better, or
Right.
at least somebody that looks like they're doing better.
Yeah.
And I realized like that was just making me really unhappy in retrospect.
Yeah.
So that's another thing, that's kind of helped me overcome that. But I think in our generation, it's so easy to be attached to technology. I mean, we're in a really interesting point in history where
Yeah.
like humans, our biology, our evolutionary processes cannot keep up with the
Right.
pace of changing technology. And so our generations, the younger generations, especially today, are caught in this position where we're basically living in an environment that we're not adapted for
Yeah.
at all. And so we have to kind of adapt on the fly and figure out like what does all of this mean? You know, how do we make sense of all of these things that are so ingrained in our society?
Right. Or how do we get what's useful out of them, right, without hurting ourselves?
Exactly. And I think, you know, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with these things. Like,
iPhones are great.
Media, it can be really useful.
Right.
It can be profoundly useful. It can change the world in a good way.
Yeah.
But, you know, you have to be able to take the good and leave the bad, which is hard sometimes with these things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you're right to point out, like, it's all relatively new, right? I mean, even, again, it's on the brain because it was like an hour ago, but Daglin mentioned this, and as a person who, you know, of his age has seen these technologies develop, and he even had some experience, you know, working like on the other side of it, like developing them, helping refine these algorithms and stuff like that. And it was interesting to hear him talk about it through the lens of an observer, as opposed to like myself, who like I don't know, my entire adult life, people have had smartphones, right? Yeah. More so for you even, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like it's, but it's all new. And, you know, I think there's something to be said for like, again, as an entrepreneur, you are more familiar with like theories of change and systems change and the fact that change happens than maybe the average person. And you can see that, you know, it's always disruptive. It's all disruptive all the time, but good things happen too. And there's often inordinate attention paid on the bad, right?
I totally agree. And I think like overall, this is an amazing time to be alive. I mean,
yeah, it's pretty cool.
The pace at which things are changing is kind of crazy. I mean, you go back like a few hundred years and like you wouldn't hear about new inventions like ever.
No.
You know, it'd be like insane when somebody came up with any kind of new technology. And now it's just like there's so many you can't even know all of them if that's all you spent your time doing.
Yeah.
And so it ultimately the pace of change is a good thing. It's just something we have to keep up with and kind of adapt to for sure.
Yeah.
But it's exciting.
No, I agree. Jason, tell me what makes you optimistic about either your work or the world. Give it a shot.
What makes me optimistic? Well, I guess I would say that like we have all the right ingredients for success in terms of tackling these challenges with the climate and other social environmental challenges that we have. It's just a question of kind of, first of all, giving it time. I think our generations living in the social media age are very impatient, and that's a good thing because it kind of gives a sense of urgency to work on these things. But also we need to remember that any kind of systems change, as you mentioned it takes time, and it's actually important for it to take time because that gives us the time to do it correctly.
Yeah.
And so, because if you just move fast and break things, that is going to, that's really going to not set up the world in the way that we want it.
Well, it's been really fun having you on today, Jason. Thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Hey there. Thanks for spending some time with us, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. You can learn more about today's guest and how to get involved with or support their work in the show notes. If you'd like to suggest a guest for the show or have any story tips for our Good News in New Hampshire newsletter, shoot me a message at hello@granitegoodness.com. Music for this episode was provided by the band Sneaky Miles, who hail from Newmarket, New Hampshire. Recording space was provided by Treeline Outfitters in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Until next time, I'm the creator of Granite Goodness and the host of the Granite Goodness podcast, Andy DeMeo. Thanks for listening.